I think in first starting to talk about a vaccine, we really have to understand what a vaccine is. And a vaccine is really based on this concept of protective immunity. And this is the idea that when you're infected with something like a virus and your immune system fights it off, your immune system creates something called antibodies. And these antibodies, they circulate through your body and they remember that virus. They remember that disease that got fought off before. So if you encounter that disease again, that disease can't even take hold. You fight it before it can even cause the infection. This is this idea of protective immunity. Now, the beautiful thing about it is you can't get the same disease twice in most instances. The challenge of it is you have to get the disease the first time. And as we know with something like COVID-19, 400,000 deaths, millions of people with potential long-term effects, people don't survive the first encounter with this particular disease. So the question for vaccines and protective immunity is, how do you build protective immunity without actually giving somebody the disease? And this is where the mRNA vaccine comes in. So the concept here is, instead of exposing somebody to the entire disease, you actually expose someone to just a small portion of the disease, right? You expose somebody to a small portion of the virus. For COVID-19, and you have to do a lot of research to figure out which small portion, it's called the spike protein. This is on the virus. It allows the virus to infect the cells. If you just expose the spike protein to the immune system, right, a shot in the arm, what happens is that the immune system sees that and creates that protective immunity. So after that second shot, if you encounter COVID-19, your body is ready to fight it. So ready to fight it that you actually won't get symptomatic disease. This is wonderful, and this is the concept that all of the vaccines are based off of. The question is then, what's an mRNA vaccine? So viruses are really composed of two different things. There are the proteins. The spike protein is one, and these proteins really cause disease. They allow the virus to enter into the cell. They allow the virus to replicate all of these pieces. But the other component of viruses is called their genomic makeup or their genetic makeup, and this is called RNA. RNA, I want you to think of as the instructions to make the virus. So the RNA of the whole virus is the instructions to make the whole virus. Now, the mRNA vaccine itself is just the instruction to make the spike protein. So the first question then this answers is, well, can it make the whole virus? It can't make the whole virus. That's only the genetic code, the instructions for 10%, right? It cannot encode for the entire virus. But what it does when you inject that RNA into the arm is the cells there make the spike protein. The spike protein that gets presented to the immune system, and the immune system creates protective immunity. Now, the other thing I want to cover just real quick in that explanation is, we're talking about genetic code. We have our own genetic code, right, in our cells that's called DNA. And if that DNA in your known genetic code is messed with, then there can be long-term downstream effects. That's how a lot of cancers are caused. So another question that has come up, and look, these questions are great questions. These are the questions that I had as well. Does the mRNA interact with our DNA? And so the answer to that is no. So the mRNA, when it gets into the cell, doesn't get to where our DNA is, and there's no interaction there at all. So you can't have DNA changes in long-term effect. The other beautiful thing about the mRNA vaccine is that it disintegrates quickly. Once it's in the cell, it makes the spike protein, and then the cell breaks it down. So what you have then is that genetic code helping to create that protective immunity. So I think that covers a lot about the vaccine. I know there was a lot that's wrapped up in that, but it really creates for an effective vaccine to create that protective immunity.